Ladies and gentlemen, it's your favorite podcast, the Holy Shift Podcast, back. How's it going, everybody? We are back. What is this, episode 7?
Yep,
I think so.
episode
The
7.
Lord's number. The last episode of the podcast. Just kidding. We're just getting started. So, we're going to do another episode here. What are we talking about today?
It is basically pastor's interview. So Josh and TJ both have been in the ministry as youth leaders and pastors. So got some questions I'm going to ask them.
All right, let's hit it.
Pastor has left the building.
We're going to be talking about our time in ministry, why we decided to step down from ministry. Let's get into it.
All right. So the first question is, we'll do Josh first, I guess. What led you into the ministry?
Ooh, what led me into the ministry? So I heard this story once. Well, let me back up. I'll give you the cliff notes, so we're not here all night. So growing up, I was always in church, but didn't take my faith very seriously until I was a senior in high school. And then at that point, like I was all in. And then this whole God's will thing just kind of hit me in the face. I became very obsessed with it, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do with my life, what God wanted me to do. And I heard this story about a guy named D.L. Moody, who was a big time, he's a good preacher, and now he has a school named after him, all this stuff. What was it, Great Awakening? That one Moody was? Second Great Awakening? Maybe? Anyways, old time preacher guy.
A little later after that.
There was a story that I read about him that said he was in church. He was a younger man, and the pastor said, "The world has yet to see what God can do with someone who is fully surrendered to Him." And then the story goes on that D.L. Moody said, "I'll be that man," and I just wanted that. I wanted to be that guy that was fully surrendered to God, and I never felt, because people always talk about being called to ministry. I tried to manufacture that. Like, I wanted this cool story like people have about being called into the ministry, and I never felt this overwhelming call or whatever. So it just got to the point where, God, I don't know if this is what you want me to do, but I volunteer and I'm going to pursue ministry. Like, that's what I want my job to be. And so that became the focus. And it took about, that was when I was 18 or 19, and I wasn't on staff at a church until I was 28. So it was a lot of frustration in those 10 years of wandering in the wilderness, so to speak. But anyways, that is kind of what led up to it. Really, because I toyed around with the idea of ministry. Then I did a missions internship, or I went on a missions trip to Ireland, and then I went back to Ireland on an internship and was there for 2 months. And it was while I was there that I was like, yeah, ministry is what I want to do. I thought I was going to be a missionary, but that didn't pan out, so I became a pastor.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, so like we've always, like we've said several times, we grew up in church. Never on the radar for me. Then I did my, sowing the wild oats after high school.
I was the good kid.
Yeah, Josh didn't never do that, but
I guess I'm doing that now.
Lived the bachelor life, and then whenever I was 20, towards the end of that year, is when I guess you could say I got saved or recommitted my life. And it was at that time that I decided, like he mentioned, just going all in. And it became an obsession. Obsession would be the word, I guess. For me, there was no. There was just no question, because to me, I was just like I said, going all in. So I felt like that meant everything.
That was the next logical step.
Yeah,
Yeah.
At that time, there was nothing. I decided there's nothing more important than something that's going to last for eternity, like having an impact on people's lives for eternity. So I said, I'm committing to this, and I started getting obsessed. I read the Bible. Books a day. I'd sit down and go through the letters of the New Testament. I'd go through. I hated reading through, the first 5 books of the Bible, but I did it, and I'd try to get everything I could out of there. From there, I got obsessed with theology, which was it was something we didn't learn a lot about growing up. So whenever I discovered, uh, you know, systematic theology, I guess you could call it, I just really dove into that. I started learning what different denominations believe and everything, and I felt like I had so much. I was just like a sponge, and I just felt like I had to pour that out, everything I was absorbing.
The cage stage.
So, yeah, it was 100%. I was obsessed, and I guess ministry started for me in Walmart parking lot. Man, I started talking. I would talk to people. I would talk to people at work. I was working in Panama City Walmart at the time, and I would witness to everybody, and then uh, I would once I'd go on my breaks, I would start. There was homeless people that lived in their cars in the parking lot. I would always talk to them, and then I just. I was just committed to it, everything, and I eventually started teaching Sunday school, getting opportunities like that, teaching Sunday school. Um, did some guest speaking, and you know, still in my early 20s, probably like 23 or so at this point. Not married, hadn't met Chelsea yet, but I got to do a little bit of guest speaking. I spoke at a men's conference. It was a very small thing, so it's not as grand as it
I
seems.
remember that.
Yeah, spoke
I
at some
forgot about
churches, like on Sunday nights and stuff. I don't know. I felt like an evangelist at the time, and I was always geared more towards adults. That was, I don't know, I guess my passion at the time. And then when I met Chelsea, she was very into youth ministry, very engaged in that, and started going back to our original church at this point, and got a lot of opportunities to teach Sunday school. And then meeting her, she wanted to get involved in youth ministry, so we started. We were like youth leaders. It was just me and her, and then the youth pastor and his wife, and we helped out a lot then. And eventually, that led to me finding a youth pastor role. But for me, what led me into it was just an obsession with this idea that eternity was all that was important. Didn't care about finding some other job. I was working at Walmart, wasn't pursuing anything higher than that, because I just wanted to do ministry.
Yeah. It just felt like, and I think you're saying the same thing. It felt like the next logical step. Like, we're going to go all in. I'm going to dedicate my life to Jesus. Like, what better way to do that than my whole life revolve around that? So it's my job, 40 hours a week. I get home. I'm the priest of my home, and then just in my day to day, whatever, passing out tracts.
And I feel like there's a parable where Jesus is talking about there's not enough laborers in the field or in the vineyard or something.
The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few.
That's it. Thank you.
So at the time, can you both y'all say that y'all felt like that was y'all's calling then?
It's what I wanted to do. I never felt this overwhelming call. Like people tell these crazy stories, or like they're running from the call of God, and God's trying to pull them in. Like I was, like people would always say they're like, I don't want to completely surrender. Like, what if God calls me to Africa? Like, I distinctly remember crying in my room at night, like, God, I'll go to Africa if that's what you want me to do. Just like, show me, open the door. I'll do whatever you want.
Hmm.
Like, I wanted to, like, I wanted to do whatever God wanted me to do.
Yeah, called. I guess to me, like the idea of being called was just like that parable we just mentioned. There's harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. I mean, I felt like
Willingness.
there was no other option.
Yeah.
Like I from the time I was 20, you know, not the full year, but right before I turned 21, because I remember celebrating my 21st birthday and I didn't drink anything.
Oh, I thought you were going the opposite way.
No, I was like,
take a break
I
from my
can't
faith.
believe, since I was 17 to now, I've done nothing but want to party it up. And then I I'm turning 21 and here I am, like, have zero interest in any alcohol. But anyway, I say that to say, so from 21 to 20, well, probably to 21 to 24, I did nothing but read the Bible, read, listen to preaching, read theology. I mean, I was absorbed in it. So the calling to me was that I was just obsessed with it. So
I remember on our lunch breaks, we both worked at Walmart together. And on our lunch breaks, we would go to the library and like get on Sermon Index and watch sermons.
Watch sermons, man. So I don't know. There was no I never had that experience either of running away from something and then feeling like there was some kind of special calling. But there was like this, I mean, just overwhelming passion for it, obsession, like I keep saying. But.
Okay. And Josh, since you mentioned the whole like being called to Africa and stuff, do you remember any distinct time when were you ever like hear God's voice saying, he was warning you?
I never heard like an audible voice or anything. I definitely thought there were things that God was calling me to do. When I got back from Ireland, I tried so hard to go back. They were starting another school, or they were starting a ministry school there, the church that I interned at. I was going to go back. I wanted to join that. Like I was ready to pack up and, set down some roots over in Ireland. I loved it over there. And, I mean, it was just.
I mean, because it kind of sounds like, like you were like you're saying you were pursuing it, like you were pushing hard and wanting to do it, but you really weren't getting anything back from God, kind of, I guess.
Yeah, well, at the time, I didn't think it was. I thought it was outside source keeping me preventing it from happening, not God. So I was so frustrated because I wanted to do.
Did you ever feel like a supernatural?
Yeah, but no, I never heard an audible voice or anything like that. It was obsession is a good word, like TJ said. It was what I wanted to do. Like I was to the point where everything I did, I wanted to base off the Great Commission because I was really scared about making the wrong decision. And then I heard Paul Washer actually say, um, he said something along the lines of, "Do you think God's going to send you to hell for obeying the Great Commission?" I was like, "Okay, well, I volunteer for ministry then."
So I had one more question. When TJ, when you were talking about reading the Bible, and you hated reading like the first 5 books, when they I've always heard you're not supposed to start off reading like straight from like Genesis 1. Like they tell you like a good spot to start at. I guess have you heard that? Kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Starting John or something like that. One
Well,
of
it
the
just yeah. I
Gospels.
mean, because if you start in
Romans
Genesis,
Road.
if you start in Genesis, you're going to get bogged down pretty quick, especially if you're new
right.
You're not
to the
gonna
whole
know
to the whole
what's going
faith and
on.
everything. Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I started probably Romans. Um,
Okay.
I didn't, I would read the Book of John. I didn't really like the other Gospels as much as I liked John. Uh, but I remember starting with Romans and then moving on to like Ephesians, Galatians. The letters of Paul were very easy to kind of digest and gave me a good basis to start feeling confident that I knew enough to teach. But the Old Testament stuff came later. It came after I felt like I understood things. Then
Right.
I wanted to understand it all. I don't know.
I just
I
remember
thought one day I
in
was going to figure it all out.
yeah, I remember in youth group they would kind of have like they would do it like once a year where you could read the Bible in a year and they'd have like a schedule how to go by or
Yeah,
whatever.
I remember that stuff.
All right,
Always hard to do.
Random question: Have you listened? Because I mean, we grew up in the same church. Did you sit? Were you in a service where either one of us preached or both of us? Have you heard both of us preach?
Josh, I believe. I don't think TJ though. I'm pretty sure I've heard
I was just curious.
Josh.
I
Yeah.
only preached like 2 or 3 youth services there. I did a lot of Sunday school teaching, but
Yeah.
mostly as far
Which
as
I guess
preaching.
y'all are in Gainesville.
Yeah, they weren't there
Yeah,
at that point.
but it seems like you did preach one night before we had went down there though.
Maybe.
Because you said you started at what age? Kind of get into it.
I mean, I don't remember the first time I preached. It was a Sunday night, like the first service. Or I preached one time in our youth, or maybe it was college age, whatever. And I thought I was about to change the world. And it like I had my notes. I had it to a T about 30 minutes, and I got up there and got done in 5 minutes. And then gave the most worthless altar call, and the associate pastor had to come up and talk for 15 20 minutes, so we didn't leave it right when service started. It was humbling experience, learning experience.
I'm sure I was there because she didn't go down there till she was 20, so 2010.
Yeah, it
So
was probably
anyway,
somewhere around there, because I came back from Ireland in '09, so that's when I started
okay.
wanting to speak and stuff.
And then she went down there. I didn't go down there in 2012, so I was probably still in there. Anyway, second question. What was your experience like as a pastor or youth pastor?
Why don't you start off?
All right. Yeah.
Digest
So,
this question.
yeah, I never was a pastor. I was a youth pastor at an Assemblies of God church for a year. Did it for a year, and my experience was, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed the people, loved the kids. During that time, I did Sunday school every Sunday morning. I preached every Wednesday night, and on I think once a month I did a Sunday night service. And I quickly realized it was a lot of responsibility. Um, it was, but it was a good experience. You know, I don't have any like church hurt, any negative things to say. There were people, you have people who, because I was a young guy, so you have people question, if you know what you're doing, know what you're talking about. Um, but as far as the whole experience, it's definitely an experience I'm glad I had. It taught me a lot about leadership, taught me a lot about public speaking, gave me a lot more confidence. so the experience as a whole was definitely a plus in my life. It was something I would, not change. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the pastor that I worked under. He was always good to talk to. He was always I don't know. He was a good guy, just a naturally good guy, and I enjoyed working with him and learning from him. So my experience as a whole, I mean, no complaints. Grateful I did it. What about you?
Josh?
Yeah, so I've had two separate experiences. I've been on staff at two different churches. They were both learning experiences for sure. The first church I was at, I had no idea what I was doing, and I inherited a group. I was the youth pastor, and I inherited a group of like 70 to 80 students. I mean, we would hit 100
Oh yeah, I only had
sometimes.
like, top. I think one night we had like 35 kids.
Yeah,
So
this had nothing to do with
big
me.
difference in
My
our situation.
my predecessor was a very talented and gifted guy, so I got to come in on his coattails and reap some of that fruit. But it was I was in. I mean, honestly, looking back, I was in way over my head. But it was definitely a learning experience. I thought it was nothing like what I thought it was going to be, and I don't really. I was trying to think today how to explain this because, like, it was like this struggle for so long. Like, I wanted to be in ministry, and I remember just. I remember we were at our apartment. Uh, the pastor called me. We were looking for a youth pastor. He's like, "Hey, I think I want you to be the next youth pastor." And I get off the phone and tell Joanna, I'm just like bawling. I'm like, this is finally happening. And I don't know, I was expecting like this culmination moment, like I'm going to be living my dream. And it was just, you know, the mundane 9 to
So
5, like everything else.
had you been asking him for a while or telling him that you were wanting to do it and asking him to?
Yeah. Well, the guy that was there before me, we were really good friends. But anytime there so I wasn't like trying to like
Right.
overtake him or anything. But anytime there had been an opening, I tried to throw my hat in the ring for sure.
Okay.
And though I mean, I'll give him credit. It was a very wise decision not to hire me at that point. I had no idea what I was doing or believed or talking about or anything. I found it very frustrating at the time, but it was definitely wisdom on his part.
What age was it for both y'all?
I didn't get hired till I was 28, but I was trying to get
Well,
hired when I
I
was
mean,
19.
the kids' age.
Oh yeah, middle and high school.
Yeah,
Okay.
same. I had a few sixth graders and then mostly high schoolers.
Well, middle and high school at my first church. Second church was birth through 12th grade. I did all of children's and students.
I think I was 26 when I did it. Was my age, so 25 or 26.
All right. So once y'all were on staff at a church, were your eyes open to anything unexpected behind the scenes?
I would say for me, um, like he mentioned it being mundane. I mean, that was definitely eye opening because it was a lot more, which I was not. I still had my regular day job,
Right.
um,
What?
but
Yeah.
it was still like it was not spectacular. My eyes were open to the
Yeah,
fact that
that's a good way to describe
it's very much just a job, and before becoming before being on staff at a church, I imagined it as a much more glorious, like you're in constant prayer.
changing world
God's,
every day, changing
God,
somebody's life.
now, like now you're the vessel on stage speaking God's word. So imagine there'd just be like this new, like, connection with God open up so he could just pour through me.
Constant
And,
revelation.
nothing like that happens. And then it was also the most unexpected thing for me was that it was much more theatrical. And what I mean by that is like you have to bring some kind of performance to the stage. Like I could get up there. I had experiences, man, where I felt like I had just a great message that would be, the youth really need to hear. And as far as like solid, teaching, I thought, this is something that they will really benefit from if they hear this message. But if I didn't present it in a way that kept their attention, uh, it would not it fell flat. In this one instance, I'm thinking of like this was a solid message. I was excited about it. Tried to talk through it thoroughly, very teaching, and it fell flat. But then I could put together like a just some standard 3 points in a poem kind of message and elevate my emotions a little bit, or get some music going at the end of
Music's key.
service. Take a pause and say, let's just wait a moment on the Holy Spirit as the soft music played, and then hit them with some kind of like if you walk out of this building, you know are you going to make it to heaven if you get in a car wreck, or if Jesus comes back tonight, where are you going to be? Those kind of things really got a response. So as a youth pastor, I noticed that part of it more. And that was eye opening to me.
do you remember whenever I was a youth pastor, you were a youth leader, and I wanted you to play the music at the altar call. So like I had just preached this message, and I thought it was a good message. I'm ready for an intense altar call. I'm like, can I get some music? And you walk over there and turn it on, and someone had cranked the volume all the way up, so the speakers just start blaring this music and just destroyed the nice intimate atmosphere. Just Chris Tomlin just starts.
But it's funny how much that plays a role. Just all these subtle things.
Do you think?
But good.
Do you think? Can you put a percentage on how much of that happens? Like, I guess pastors now.
I hate to call it manipulation, but that's essentially. Is that what you're talking about? Like the music, the pastors,
right? Like if they don't have anything, yeah. Do you think it's like 50% of the time they're just kind of going with it like that, or you think it's a little less than that?
What do you mean they don't have anything? Like just
it like you were saying how you had kind of fallen flat, so you kind of get the music going and trying to get
how much they were
the
depend on like emotion and everything. I think it's a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. I think that plays a huge role. I think if you eliminate music, and I think if you eliminate music, that's gonna ruin a lot of the experience. Because music pulls on our emotions.
Right, exactly.
You can be in a service and be falling asleep during the message, but then when the pastor calls the band up there, mm-hmm. and then starts hitting those little,
they play that one song that hits
sayings,
just right.
Those worship notes,
yeah, and starts just kind of hammering at you. That'll get a response, even if you didn't pay attention to the entire message.
Right.
And then the messages you do pay attention to are usually the ones that are like, man, they're like, there's some excitement to it, or, some emotion. So, I think it's, I think it's a lot of dependence on emotion and music. And I hate to call it manipulation because it's not always that sounds really negative.
Right.
But that's the word, I guess.
All right.
What do you think?
Josh, have you gave your response yet, or if not, I got.
I haven't. Since this guy's been rambling forever, can you repeat the question, please?
Once you were on staff at a church, were your eyes open to anything unexpected behind the scenes?
Yeah. So let me think of how to word this. Just what caught me so off guard was how you have to let me think of the word here. I want to say this carefully. There is how you so there's just so many fires that have to be put out. And like you do something and then it offends this group, so you have to try to make it right with that group, but in doing that you offend this other group. And so just the balancing act of trying to keep the peace, because if you don't have the peace, then no one's going to listen to you when you get on stage, or you're not going to be able to get on stage anymore. So that was the biggest, because I thought I was going to be doing God's work, just going up there, being God's mouthpiece. I was going to be the next Stephen Furtick or whatever and become this great communicator. But it was a lot of, and I guess this was more my first role than my second, because my second role, the first role, I was the youth pastor. I pastored the kids. I led the kids, the students. The second role, as the student director, I led the adults that led the students. So it was two different experiences. So the my first role, that's my first ministry experience. That was what really caught me off guard. Was just, I don't know what the word for that is. What word I'm looking for, but just that balancing act of trying to keep everyone happy so I can speak into their life.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Now I had a quick question. Do you think it's harder? Because like TJ was saying, he worked a full time job and then came in and was a youth pastor on Wednesday nights, Sundays. Do you think it's harder? Can y'all hear Riker?
Riker has officially been on his first podcast.
Do you think it's harder working a full time job and coming in on Wednesday nights and Sundays preaching and I guess having to prepare during the week compared to it being your full time job and you're able to, I guess, get your sermons together during the week? And I guess like Josh, would y'all have like prayer time every morning before, like when y'all first got there? Do you think it's harder or
yeah,
easier?
so I've never been part time, but there's no way I could do it. I don't think. I probably could now, but back then I was terrible at managing my time. So yeah, at the first church I was at, we had a set prayer time as a staff, and then I mean we pretty much set our schedules after that of how to block out our day. So, and then even at the second church I was at, we had time to block out on our schedule for personal development and uh, spiritual time if we wanted to. So it's definitely it's really easy for preachers to get up there and talk about how you should be reading and praying every day, because they have these full-time pastors, they have the window to do that. I was hired part-time at the second church I was at first, but I don't think because student ministry takes a break during the summer, and I think I was hired part time during the summer, so I never had a service because I was full time by the time school started back, so I never had to do that. But it's a lot, man. You did it right.
I did. Yeah, I
Did
did
you
it
go to
part
school?
time.
Were you in school too?
No,
Okay,
I didn't go to school till I quit. Nah, there's no way I could have did that. I think I did take like ministry courses like through the Assemblies of God, but those were just, I mean, they were not difficult because I was already obsessed with that stuff anyway, and I
Right.
loved it. But it was still hard. Yeah, I longed for a full time. We weren't a big enough church for me to be full time at the time. So they paid me a little bit, but it was, I couldn't have lived on it at all. And we weren't big enough, they didn't need a youth pastor there during the day. But I always wanted that. I wanted to have like a full day to just pray and spend time just really preparing so that I could go in that night and just knock their socks off, with
Right.
some fiery message. But nah, it was difficult. I would think full time would be a lot better.
Yeah, because when when I was growing up, our first church, whenever we were in a Baptist church, our pastor, even though he was the full time pastor, it was just a small country church, so he worked a full time job, during the week and stuff. So hats off to him.
Yeah, it's
Um,
tough,
It is tough.
especially lead pastor.
yeah. Was there a negative side or any negative experiences to the ministry that you'd like to share?
That I would like to share. It was so the biggest negative for me, and this again was more so at the first church, was I felt like I was constantly having to defend myself. I had to defend the reason I taught something, the decision I made. It was just constant, and this wasn't like strictly coming from like the head pastor, my boss. It was like, I mean, parents, constantly always have, and it was exhausting. Just I wasn't a very confident person then, anyways. And to always be second guessed, to always have to explain myself, it was exhausting
Do you feel
emotionally,
like it was
mentally,
kind of
physically.
because of your age? Because you're a lot younger?
That may have something to do with it. I think, and this is just speculation here. I'm not taking a shot or anything. I think it was the church I grew up in. I think it's kind of hard to get respect or authority
Yeah.
when everyone's like, look, I kind of felt like people looked at me like, oh, look how cute Josh is playing pastor, instead of like, as opposed to someone coming in from the outside.
The
That was
verse
Right.
about that.
that was hard.
I think
Yeah,
that's a good.
prophet has no
Prophet,
respect in his hometown or
yeah,
whatever.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without honor in his own country.
And again, that's sheer speculation.
Yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, everybody looks at you as oh, this is that kid that was
Mm-hmm.
here. He's trying to tell us,
And
preach to us.
there is a dynamic. Me and the pastor were super close. Like, I mean, he was a father figure to me, and to change that dynamic and become my boss, like there was some adjustments for both of us, and I mean, it is
Yeah,
what it is. I guess it's hard to
I
go
think
from
that's
one to
with
the
any
other.
job too. Any day to day job where you're a regular employee, you have regular coworkers next to you, and then you get into a management
Oh
role,
yeah,
and then you're over
absolutely.
them. It's hard
yeah,
to,
Because you're coworkers, and then yeah.
yeah, they don't like
yeah. I
to
never
respect you.
respected a guy who I knew goofed off with me, and then became my boss.
Yeah.
Right, right.
So, uh, yeah, and I guess negative experience for me. The main negative thing. And I mean, managing people is just managing people. Everybody's got problems. So I wouldn't say any of that was negative. It was challenging at times, especially dealing with high school kids and stuff they might be going through. But the main negative for me was there's just in a role like that, there's a lack of room for, I want to say, growth. Like, okay, like I was Assemblies of God. Like I think I can't remember. I think I had to sign a paper saying I agree to the 16 fundamental truths.
If you get credentialed, you do for
Yeah,
sure.
okay, if you get credentialed.
Yeah.
But I remember, I mean, but still, that's expected. Like, all right, we believe these 16 things. You know, four of them are super important. You got like the four.
Yeah, the 16, the 8, and number
Okay,
8 is the most important.
And so, but so there's no room to waver. Like, there's no room to. I remember studying guys like Paul. He mentioned Paul Washer earlier. Paul Washer's like this really hardcore Baptist, Calvinist, like Reformed guy, and I spent a lot of time listening to him. Um, a lot of the stuff that he taught made sense to me, but it was technically, it violated some of those 16 truths that we were supposed to be teaching. So there was no room, and pastors do it. A lot of times people aren't aware unless you really know what they're teaching. But then, and this was a difficult time because I become a youth pastor, but then I really start shifting in my views at that time. I start reading books by like Rob Bell and stuff, and then I start changing. So I go from really hardcore, and then I start reading more. At the time, I think they called them like emergent church guys, but they're more liberal in their Christian faith. But some of their ideas were just like really connecting with me, and I kind of started wanting to explore that. But you don't have that freedom. There's no freedom, I guess, to change your mind, change ideas. I mean, there, you couldn't even hint at any like liberal politics or anything. So I mean, my political views and my uh, religious views had to toe the
Completely
line.
separate.
Yeah, and again, I think that ties into that was some of the frustration I was feeling. I was having to explain myself. It was we used to have these retreats where because the Assemblies of God is separated into districts. So all the youth pastors from our district, we'd go on this retreat. And I can't remember who it was, but I remember one of them telling me about when he was interviewed to get his credentials. And, you had to sign the thing about you agree with the 16 tenets. And it was something about the rapture. And he was explaining his point of view. He's like, I'm not saying that I'm there yet, but if Revelation is referring to something in history that's already happened, like I'm okay with that. And they were just like looking at each other like, do you believe in speaking in tongues? He's like, yeah. He's like, all right, sign.
Huh.
As long as you got that number 8, baby, speaking in tongues.
Was that really number 8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next question, y'all might have kind of already answered it, I guess, in that last question. What struggles did y'all face?
Yeah, is what I was just saying. Just having to defend myself.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, just being so inexperienced. I mean, having absolutely no leadership experience and coming in trying to lead 80 kids is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, it was the same for me. Like just having no I knew the Bible and I knew doctrines and theology and stuff, but just still mentoring kids, helping them through like real life problems. It's not helpful to just know the Bible. Like you need to know how to talk to somebody. So I lacked that kind of training. I mean, I guess I got on the job training. I learned a lot from it, but that was a struggle. Just being able to coach kids through life situations and build relationships. Those things were important, and that's not something you're going to, really learn in, a Bible or a theology book. So that was a struggle. And then obviously as I got more curious, my views began to change, trying to teach what was expected of me was also a struggle a lot of times.
Yeah, it seems like it'd be hard because you have to be careful with the kids too, because they will take what you say, like everything, like what you say, and they're not really old enough to kind of
Right. Yeah. Like they take what you say as
truth,
gospel truth.
Yeah. So, at what point did you know it was time for you to get out? Josh, you go first.
Oh, that's a pretty easy one for me. I'll just be flat out honest. it was the point when I started hoping kids wouldn't show up to service, so I didn't have to do stuff. I started to feel so disingenuous because I was getting up on stage telling these kids to believe things I wasn't even sure if I believed anymore. I was saying what I knew was expected of me. I'm just trying to be. I thought at the time I was being respectful, but I was being so disingenuous. It wasn't fair to the organization that had hired me. This was the second job that I was at, second church I was at. It wasn't fair to the organization that hired me. It wasn't fair to the adults I was leading or the kids. Um, and she probably has no recollection of it. But I was having a conversation with someone once at like a Super Bowl party or something, and they told me that what they respected most about me or what they admired most or whatever whenever I would speak is that I came across so genuine. And for whatever reason, like every day I was going to work, I could just hear their voice in my head saying that. And I was just like, I do not
Hmm.
want to be disingenuous. And so I told them, I mean, we had one-on-one meetings every other week with our campus pastor. And he said, he had like some questions that he was supposed to walk through. And he's like, so what is frustrating you the most right now? And he just opened the door. So I just unloaded everything. It was probably a shock for him. To his credit, he held it together pretty well. He had every right to fire me on the spot, but he did not. I was just like, I don't know what I believe anymore. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, that's when I knew it was time.
Arquette's heads are falling off.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, it's a great movie. So for me, I guess I knew, yeah, just whenever I couldn't teach the things, whenever I didn't want to teach the things that were expected of me. So, for example, Assemblies of God, you gotta teach on baptism in the Holy Spirit and speaking in tongues, and
I never did.
you didn't?
No.
Wow.
You
I
didn't
don't
teach
know
it, or
that I
you didn't
ever.
speak in tongues?
I didn't teach it. Maybe once in passing, but I would never teach that tongues is the evidence because I didn't believe that.
Yeah, I had a hard time teaching that because I didn't really believe it that was the
Hmm.
evidence. Um, because like I said, I don't know. We listen to a lot of preaching across the spectrum. Baptist, Methodist, and a lot of the preachers didn't believe that. So to me, I mean, it was like, what was I saying about these guys? But anyway, so when I started not wanting to teach things that were expected of me, I didn't want to talk about tithing because I wasn't sure what I thought about that. Didn't want to teach on speaking in tongues. I didn't want to teach on the rapture. Like my beliefs were changing, and I was getting a lot more curious about other stuff. Um, I just really wanted to explore things, knowledge outside of Christianity. I wanted to go to college and learn about science and history and other religions. And so my curiosity, I guess, overwhelmed my desire to speak truth at people. Um, so yeah, I didn't want to preach anymore. So I was like, yeah, I'm done. This is it for me. Time to go to school.
It did feel that was another thing. One of the reasons that I resigned is because it does. I guess this falls into feeling disingenuous. It's like, I mean, you're kind of paid to believe a certain way, and that expectation wasn't put on me by anyone, but that's how I felt, and I felt like I didn't have the freedom to navigate through the questions I was asking while on staff at a church. I didn't want to misrepresent the church. I didn't want to. I mean, I have a lot of respect for the leaders and everything, so I thought that was the most respectful thing, and the only way I would feel true to myself, I guess. If that doesn't sound too new agey.
So, do y'all know the reason why there's these different denominations?
It's just different beliefs, so they get
Hmm.
a differing opinion, and then they camp up on it.
Yeah, a lot of it's little stuff like
Pentecostalism.
yeah, well, Methodist and Pentecostal, there's a lot of similarities, but then you've got the speaking in tongues thing with so Assemblies of God is a Pentecostal denomination, and speaking in tongues is the evidence of the baptism of the Holy Spirit. But then you have oneness Pentecostals who, well, they don't believe in the Trinity, and then they also believe that speaking in tongues is evidence of salvation. And then you have, Church of God people who they're very close to Assemblies of God. They believe speaking in tongues is the evidence of baptism of the Holy Spirit, but they believe like sanctification is like so you get saved, sanctified, then filled with the Holy Spirit. And so there's all these little tiny differences. And then you've got some within that group that are holiness as well. So long hair, long skirts for the women. I think men usually stay clean shaven. So
then you got non-denominations that just pick what they like from the rest, and like, hey, come on over here, we're the best of all.
Now, where does snake handling fall?
Yeah, snake handling
in the crazy section.
That's the wild. They're Pentecostal, but they take one verse out of Mark and they run with it. That's what they base everything on.
Yeah.
So just little differences, little interpretations of different scriptures lead to thousands of denominations.
Do y'all have any regrets of leaving?
Regrets about leaving? You got any?
Yes, I do. Not my second church, but the first. So when I resigned from the second church, I felt like I was running to something. When I resigned from the first church, I felt like I was running away from something. So I feel like now, if I was in the same situation, I'd be able to I'd have a lot more confidence in myself. I would be able to stand my ground, so to speak, a lot more and put people in their place if need be. So I felt like I was so inexperienced. I was so scared. I had absolutely no confidence. And I just ran away from that as fast as I could because I didn't like feeling like that. And so that's a regret. I wish I would have manned up, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't have any regrets about leaving. It was the right thing. Also don't have any regrets about being in the position.
Yeah, 100%.
So it was a good experience. But yeah, I mean, when you can't teach what they want you to teach or preach what they want you to preach, I mean, you're only doing them a disservice by being there and yourself. So no regrets. I went to school and I enjoyed school a lot. Went to college and so
now you're doing your true calling.
Maybe. Yeah.
For now.
Who knows if anybody has a true calling.
Yeah.
We're passionate about things for time, true. And then we
get bored and move on.
Yeah.
That's my problem. I get bored too quick.
So, do y'all still attend church? And if so, explain. If not, explain.
Still attend church?
Yeah, we still attend. We actually attend the second church I was on staff at. I enjoy church. I enjoy the community. Like even from our old church, the first church I was at, I mean, if something happened crazy tomorrow, we would be flooded with phone calls and visits. I mean, that's just a guarantee. I think the community it brings is really good. I mean, I think the talks or sermons or whatever you're supposed to call them now they're applicable whether you're a believer or non-believer. And it's not, I have not shut the door on Christianity. It's not like I've just, that part of my life is over and now I do my own thing. Like there are a lot of aspects I've said this before, there's a lot of aspects of Christianity I enjoy that I still apply to my life. And I really enjoy the pastor's messages. I think they're just helpful whether you're a believer or not. And they also give a different perspective, because I feel like since I've taken, the evangelical lenses off, it's hard for me to go back there sometimes and to see that perspective. So it's just to hear Pastor explain things from his perspective and stuff just gives me more insight to why he believes what he believes. Can I find my way back to believe that, or this is why I don't believe that? It just helps me think through what I believe as well.
I do not go to church anymore. We don't go as a family. We now when I left youth pastoring, we still went. That was not the reason. Um, we were excited to be out of leadership and then back in church because, I mean, even though we at that time we disagreed with some minor stuff, rapture, speaking in tongues, but they were not like major. We still enjoyed church and we still enjoyed Assemblies of God church. And even now, not going to church, there's still some things I do miss, like the community. I mean, that's just you can't replace that. Even like I work at a school, and our school is very. We do a lot of events, a lot of activities and stuff, but it's not the same as church. Church, there's more of an emotional level, a connection with people. So I don't miss that, but I don't miss hearing sermons. Man, you know, I don't know. I'm too critical of a thinker. It's when I'm being taught doctrines and teachings and stuff that I have long put out of my mind. Uh, I didn't enjoy that. I don't enjoy feeling so critical, but I couldn't help it sitting under sermons. And then I guess our big thing for me is kids. There's a lot of things that I was taught growing up that I don't want my boys to be taught, um, because of the impact it had on me. I prefer to um, take responsibility for their education and things like that myself, not put them under some knuckleheaded 28-year-old who could be spouting God knows what in there. So.
Wise decision. It's pretty cringy to look back and some of the things I've said and done.
But we enjoy a lot of family time on Sundays, and that's that it's a very peaceful day for us. We get out, do something as a family. Um, so while we miss the community aspect of it and stuff like that, we have good days. Sundays are good
You
days.
still pop into church occasionally.
What about you, Mr. Interviewer?
Yeah.
You still go to church? And if not, why?
You're muted, by the way.
Yep. No, we don't. Whenever we moved to Gainesville, we still went to church. Up until we moved up here. We moved up here, we knew nobody. We eventually, met friends and stuff. They were more like they would go every now and then, maybe once a month, maybe, and then of course on Easter, Christmas, and stuff, we would go then. But we eventually kind of stopped. Well, I'll say we didn't stop there. We actually started going to Elevation, and we were actually going there. I'd say probably, I don't know, the first year, at least 2 years. We were going.
Pretty cool church
when we moved up here. Yeah. It wasn't at Stephen Furtick's campus because that was about an hour away. But we really enjoyed it, but we never got involved with any of um, the groups or anything. And then we eventually kind of stopped and just started watching the live stream on Sundays. And then it just got to a point where we just kind of stopped doing that too. So
It's got to be super hard because I've never experienced moving to another town where you know no one and then trying to get plugged into a community, especially in a church
yeah,
that size.
I guess church is a good place to meet people.
yeah.
It's I think church
Um,
serves a lot of purposes,
mm-hmm.
and like I said, I like going. Like you said, y'all went on Easter and stuff, and I still like going on Easter because I just like the excitement and you know, I like. We
Mm-hmm.
went to a church in Dothan, and I enjoyed it. I sat in the little visitors room with my son who played with toys, and I watched it on TV and got to scroll my phone as I wanted, but
Yeah.
while Josh and the rest of the family were in the service. But I
Yeah.
still enjoyed it. The people were super nice and all. So
Yeah, I do. I do enjoy. Uh, it was very weird the first Sunday. I wasn't on staff, showing up and not having to do anything. It was just like I feel like I'm going to get in trouble here at any moment.
Yeah, I was gonna
But it
ask.
is.
I was gonna ask how it feels going to that church now. Still.
Yeah, it. I think the way that our church, the church we attend now, is set up organizationally, and I think it was really helpful to help how I just kind of phased off of staff back as to just a regular attender. The church we were at before, I tried to do that. We left for a while, and they hired a new youth pastor, and we tried to go back. And I don't know, it was just too awkward and uncomfortable. It was very hard transition. Like I would try to get back involved with students, and then people were coming to me with like problems and stuff, and I'm like, I am not the leader here. That's not my problem.
Right.
It was hard, but yeah, it's so I resigned from my last position June 2020. What's this year? 20.
this year's 23. So
23.
Yeah, so June
2021.
22 is when I resigned. I've been off staff almost 2 years, and we haven't. We jumped right. We took a little bit of time off, and then we jumped back in volunteering on the guest services team. I was in the parking lot doing stuff, and Jonah was in the lobby, like greeting people. But we haven't done anything. We haven't been involved with anything over the last few months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, sorry, but
Yeah. Go
I was just
ahead.
gonna say, leaving. There was no church hurt or anything. I don't know. I feel like I want to make that clear. Like a lot of times people think, oh, what did we do that you're not coming back, or why do you don't go to church because you had a bad experience? No bad experiences, just a holy shift
That's right,
took
baby.
place, and don't
Yeah.
want to.
I can't say that honestly. There was some church hurt the first time, but after many hours of therapy and going back into ministry, I've been able to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. There really wasn't any church hurt for me. I mean, just it, it, it definitely is harder when you move away and you don't know anyone um, to get plugged in. But I mean, I don't know if we did last year, but I think the year before, like when we go home for Christmas, I think Josh's church would do a Christmas thing, and we would go to it. Um, honestly, I believe that's the last time we went. I don't think we went last year at Christmas, and I know we didn't go to Easter. Um,
Yeah, I don't think we went at Christmas either. We visited some friends. Like if friends invite us to church, a lot of times we'll go. Just see what it's all
Well, let
about.
me go ahead and extend an invitation on Christmas Eve. We'll be having a service. I'll see both you guys there.
Laney told me about that yesterday. We may send Riker with y'all. So. I'm just kidding. No, we'll see what we got going on.
So maybe we can. I guess we can wrap it up with this. I have a question for you. What would you say? What would you say to someone if they came to you and were saying they wanted to get in ministry, they wanted to pursue ministry vocationally, and they were looking for your advice or your direction, or if you thought that was a good idea, what would you say? I have no idea why they would go to you, but
if they came to me, I would just say, are you prepared to be in a position where changing your mind about what you believe or think is not an option? Are you so confident in what you believe that you're ready to, base your career off of teaching that specific truth or whatever? I don't know. I would say something, ask a question along those lines, and I would say, don't do it. Get out of here. Find something else. Yeah, it's important because I think the people who need to be in ministry, because people do need counseling. They
guidance,
just need
direction.
They need care. They need love. They need direction, and I think good pastors can give that, and they provide that. Churches do a lot. I'm definitely not against church in any way. Churches do a lot of good for a lot of people, and I value that. And if somebody wants to be in a position to help people like that, I think that's good. I just, you need to be confident in what you believe if you're going to be in that position, though, or go to a non-denominational church where they're a little more free to
come on over.
Yeah,
So,
I think non-denomination churches are bigger up here, and the churches, like, if I go to a smaller church, like a country church, or I don't even know the proper term for that. That's just coming from back home. It's just a little old country church. I feel like small churches like that, I can't really get anything out of it. I don't know if it's because,
yeah, it's the music, it's the emotion. Like, it's not there.
yeah,
That plays a
and it's
big
more
part.
just kind of like older preaching too. But then on the other side, the massive churches, because up here they're just big, like Elevation, and there's a church called the Cove. They're so massive though. There's younger people there, but I guess it's just overwhelming, But Josh, want to close this out?
Well, thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to follow us on our social media at Holy Shift Pod, and be sure to comment, like, follow, rate, all that stuff. We're on YouTube. Click the bell, turn on notifications, all that. Give us some follows, people. Jeez.